going on, guys? Welcome back. We are back after a week off. I thought maybe more would be happening in the world of Inter news coming up this week, so that's why I took last week off. But everything still kind of remained a little stagnant. But we have a couple of new things and new stories that mostly rumors, but could potentially change the forecast or outlook on how we're looking at this Inter upcoming season. So let's go ahead and dive right into that. As always, before we get into it, guys, please give me a thumbs up, a like, a comment, a share, a follow, any of that good stuff. We're surpassed 50 followers now on YouTube, so big ups and more to come, I guess. So let's dive into what kind of has been happening over the last 2 weeks. Like I said, not much really has happened, but there's some interesting rumors out there that I guess we need to talk about. First, obviously the biggest one and everything, and that is the news about Ademola Lookman, the talented Nigerian from Atalanta who has been making waves through Serie A the last couple seasons. I believe he was African Player of the Year last year as well. So obviously a big name player that Inter is being linked with. And it seems like everything, all the journalists and whatnot and people, the sources, seem to pretty much realistically all come to the same consensus that this deal is potentially going to happen. This is, I would say, on the radar, like a 75% chance of this actually happening, if not up to 90, depending on which source you trust and everything. It seems like this is a deal that not only the club wants, but also the player wants. Lookman reportedly has turned down, personal terms with a lot of other clubs, Atletico, Napoli, all because he wants to come to Inter. And reportedly, we've agreed to personal terms with Lookman until 2030, and now it's just that bargaining time, trying to strike a deal with Atalanta. Reportedly, we offered 40 million. They want 50 million for clubs inside of Italy. So we'll see. A lot of people think that the deal is going to happen probably about 45 million plus 5 million bonuses. And they reportedly, last season with Lookman potentially or on the verge of joining PSG and that deal collapsing, sources are saying, they had a verbal agreement, a gentleman's agreement that Lookman could leave this summer because he did not leave last summer. So it's a deal that is very exciting if you're an Inter fan. These are players on this level. A player like Ademola Lookman, African Player of the Year, top talent, top player in Serie A. Let's not, get it twisted. This guy has been one of Serie A's best players for the past couple of seasons. These are the players that a club like Inter should every summer be linked with. And it's exciting. This is a huge step for the club. It's a huge step for Oak Tree if we get this done. And I think this player will come in. And if we are reportedly going to a 3-4-2-1, what better player do you want in behind the strikers than a player who's proven himself in Serie A playing this system, knows the system, potentially, it's going to be different than what Gasparini set up with for Atalanta, what Kivu potentially is going to go out there with. But he knows how to play in behind a striker. And he's a player that, we desperately need. I'll talk a little bit why later he fits in, but it's someone that this could do a lot for the mentality of the club, especially coming off of a season where we went 0-2, massively big defeat in the Champions League final, crashing, if you want to call it that, in the FIFA Club World Cup out to Fluminense, the Brazilian side. And a signing like this can potentially get the fan base back on your side and more confident, especially going into a season with a new coach. So awesome news. Let's, we'll check the Instagram and we'll be posting periodically, how everything's shaken out. But as of Monday at 10:20 Eastern time in the States, nothing has really changed since last week. But apparently they're resuming, talks today is what the reports are saying. So we'll see what comes out and what news we have as far as Lookman maybe next week. And then the other big thing it sounds like is the rumors of Hakan have not gone away. Originally, it was all about Galatasaray, and the fact that he wanted to play for his boyhood club. Now the rumors are coming out that Fenerbahce and Jose Mourinho are absolutely dreaming of signing Hakan, and that Hakan would not be opposed to going to Fenerbahce, which is interesting to say the least. These rumors that you keep seeing are coming from sources outside of Italy, it seems like, sources that I'm not really familiar with on whether or not they're trustworthy. If you're a Galatasaray boyhood fan, you would think Fenerbahce would not be a club you would want to go play for. If you've ever seen videos of the derbies that they have there and absolute chaos, anytime 433 or a big soccer news outlet posts something about a Greek side, sorry, not Greek, Turkish side, it's either about Galatasaray and the comments are flooded with Fenerbahce fans just bashing, or vice versa. It doesn't seem like a very friendly derby, and the fact that this news is now coming out that Hakan is open. If you're a boyhood, Galatasaray fan, it's tough to say that you would be so open to play for Fenerbahce, but maybe he just wants to go back to Turkey. Maybe he just misses playing in Turkey. So we'll see what the news is on that one and everything. It's kind of in its infancy as far as these rumors. It seems like it's coming out every couple of days, a news story. It's not like something like the Lookman stories where it's like every 30 minutes, a different reporter is saying something. So we'll see. And then finally, before we kind of wrap this thing up, it's going to be a shorter episode this week. It was refreshing to see, if you haven't seen, Piero Ausilio came out and did an interview. I don't know if it was exclusively for Fabrizio Romano or what, but Fabrizio Romano, kind of gave us the context of what his words were, Ausilio. And essentially, one of the big things I noticed was he actually came out, something we've been seeing rumors all summer. Wasn't sure because he played a lot in the FIFA Club World Cup. But Ausilio came out and said that Aslani, everyone's favorite vice Hakan player, a lot of people just call him Ass if you want to go that way. But Ausilio came out and said they have asked Aslani to find a new club. He doesn't fit into Inter's plan. So big news as far as these fringe names that we've been kind of hearing about, if they're going to leave or if they're not. It seems like Aslani is definitely out the door. So we don't have to worry about the news on him. Eventually, it'll work itself out. So bye-bye, Aslani. He also came out and said, and this is kind of following up what we talked about just a minute ago about Hakan, but he essentially said Çalhanoğlu, Dumfries, Thuram, they're all Inter players. They haven't asked to leave. They're not going to leave. We're keeping them in-house. This was, I think the quotes were about 5-6 days ago, so a lot can change in those 5-6 days, but that's reassuring to hear that there's really no immediate plans to sell some of these players that are integral to our squad. As far as this upcoming season, maybe not a future player that we're looking out for, but as far as this upcoming season, Çalhanoğlu, Dumfries, Thuram, big name players that have been linked with a move earlier in the transfer market and even now in the transfer market are ours, and they're going to stay. So that's refreshing to hear. And then he also confirmed and said, Lookman is a player that we are interested in and that we have good relationship with Atalanta, and we're going to try and negotiate a deal for. So again, kind of hearing Ausilio come out, and I love when clubs are this transparent. I wish Inter was more transparent a lot more of the time, but I love hearing Ausilio back up some of the things that we're seeing in this crazy mercato of things where there's a new rumor every day, a new player linked to Inter. It's good to hear someone from the club come out and confirm by either saying or even not saying, not saying certain players or names that we have either been linked to or linked with a move to leave Inter. Him actually saying names and giving news straight from the club, that's reassuring to hear. So always great to hear. Would love to hear Beppe Marotta or Ausilio continue this for the next few weeks. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it, every few days. Once a week, once every week and a half. Just let us as a club know, especially after the season that we've had and the last few months more specifically, let us know kind of what the status is in this club and what us as fans, our expectations are. So great to hear. And kind of to wrap this whole thing up, I wanted to pose a question to you guys and get some interaction. There's actually been some good interaction the last couple weeks on the pod, YouTube, Instagram, social media, whatever. good conversations in the comments and everything. So kind of wanted to end with a question here and see what you guys thought. So let me know in the comments below. But something I've been thinking about over the weekend is just kind of if our mercato ended today, like if we made no more signings, no more incoming, let me back that up. If our mercato ended today and we had the signing of Lookman, that's where I want to go. Ademola Lookman, if he was in the squad. So let's just say we make the signing of Lookman and then our mercato ends today. So let's rephrase that. If our mercato ended and the only incoming signing we make for the rest of whatever was Lookman, how would you feel about the upcoming season? So it's kind of a loaded question, and it's something I asked a couple of my friends, and the consensus seemed all to be on the same page. I have maybe a little more question marks, just being a pessimist and a cynic when it comes to certain things. But if we ended it today, have we gotten better than last season? And I don't know. Make no mistake about it. Last season was a failure in the terms of not winning any trophies. But a month left into the season, this squad was still battling for a treble. So not some sort of scrub side that we're talking about here. I think for whatever reason, this break, this summer break, we've kind of viewed Inter, I feel like, in a different light than 2 months ago. And a lot happened in that 2 months ago, 3 months ago, where we lost three trophies that were essentially we were on the cusp of. Coppa Italia, Champions League, Serie A. But again, we were in those conversations. So a top squad, finalists of the Champions League, semifinalists Coppa Italia, second place by just a margin in the Serie A. Like, not a scrub squad with a top manager in Simone Inzaghi. Are we better now than we were last season? I think attacking wise, if Lookman is a signing and we've brought in Boni and kept Pio Esposito or brought him back from loan but kept him, didn't loan him back out. Attack wise, yes, because we're replacing the likes of Arnautovic, which for me, I think had a bigger impact than a lot of people would probably say he had based off that miss against Lazio towards the end of the season. But Arnautovic, whenever he came in and was healthy and played, he made an impact, especially in that second half stretch of the season with Thuram being out and whatnot. Arnautovic was a striker that we had and counted on, and unfortunately, injuries kind of derailed the last half of his season for whatever reason. But Correa will be gone, and then news is that Taremi will be gone. I don't think Auxilio came out and mentioned anything about Taremi, so not sure the validity of these news reports or whatnot. But if we lose Taremi, Arnautovic, and Correa, and have brought in Lookman, Boni, and Pio Esposito, you got to be confident about that. That's an upgrade. Whether or not Boni or Pio Esposito, they're still kind of question marks, being young and not fully proven. But Lookman instantly is better than all three of those probably combined coming in as a striker. So you got to have a great outlook just based off that signing. What worries me the most, though, is the lack of signings we've made elsewhere. And that is in defense, first of all. We'll talk about this. Defense scares me a lot just because we are an older squad. We started conceding more goals just due to mental mistakes last year than even the season we won the Scudetto. We were the best defensive team in the league that season. Last year it was Napoli, they won, and I don't see any improvement based off of last season's defense. And it seems like we're going to be slowly taking even more steps back. We've been linked with Leone from Parma all summer. Who knows? Haven't really seen much which way, whether or not it is progressing forward or not just going to happen. Cone de Winter from Genoa is another name. Still not much news. It seems like any news that comes out right now is about either Hakan or Lookman. So who knows how close we are to bringing in another defender. That is something that worries me with De Vrij, Acerbi being our only center backs, essentially. Acerbi getting older. That PSG game, it's hard to recover from a performance like that. Maybe the worst Acerbi performance we've ever seen in that PSG match. Not the only person. The whole squad performed under, but Acerbi was really bad. And then again in the FIFA Club World Cup, Acerbi really didn't show us that much. So, and then De Vrij, I love Stefan De Vrij. He's become, Acerbi's backup, whether or not you agree with that. But there's just something in the last season or two in the Juve 4-4 game. I want to say even in the Fluminense game that we lost in the FIFA Club World Cup and other games throughout the season. De Vrij, he plays really solid, but then just for like a minute in a match, and it's random times, he switches off and he follows a striker all the way back into the midfield, and there's gaps everywhere in our back line because of that. And I don't know what mentally kind of he's been going through, but if we can get that erased, I'd feel more confident. But between those two, one's 38 and one's 32, 33, something like that. Can't feel really confident going into another long season with them two being our only options there. And then Bisek Pavard, Bisek's got a mistake in him. Pavard, you never know if he's going to be healthy or even wants to play. He's a very moody player on his day. Absolutely world class, maybe. Maybe not world class, absolute class. But then his bad days can be pretty bad. So that's a sign. We got Darmian back there too, another 35, 36-year-old. And then left, I think we're pretty solid on our left center back. Bastoni, world class. That one you don't have to, kind of make a caveat. Bastoni is a world class player. And then Carlos Augusto, a great deputy at that left center back position. So a little worried about the defense, the back three. Midfield though, that's one I feel like nobody's really talking about too much, and it's kind of starting to concern me more than anything. Rumors of us playing, four men across the midfield versus 3-5-2, a 3-4-2-1 double pivot role, as everybody refers to it, in the midfield for the two center mids there. And is that something that Çalhanoğlu, a lot of people have said, does he have the legs for it? Especially after a long season coming back from injury, we saw kind of a drop off. I'm just repeating everything, everybody has said. Can he play in that double pivot role? And then Barella, I think he very well can. But who partners him if Hakan is either sold or can't play in that position? Sucic, I think that's an option, and I think he can do that role really well as well from what we've seen and all the stuff we hear about him. But then behind him, who do we have? Fratesi, can he play in that double pivot role? Everybody seems to think, rumors wise, he's going to be playing in one of those two position, two striker, two forward roles, and behind the most forward striker up top. So that counts him out. Zielinski, does he fit in a double pivot? He's almost, I don't know. I getting older. I don't know if his legs can play in a double pivot role as well. He kind of is in that same Hakan position for me. And then, like, who else do we have? Aslani is getting sold. Mkhitaryan, another player they're saying is going to play in that those two forward positions behind the striker. So essentially, we're just left with Hakan, Sucic, and Barella. If Hakan gets sold, even if he doesn't get sold, our depth there is worrisome. And these are players that have, Hakan and Barella, played a lot of football in the past 3 seasons. Legs look tired towards the end of the season and aren't getting any younger. Hakan 31, Barella I think 27, 28. We got to find some depth there. And then if Hakan is sold, we got to make one or two signings. So the midfield really worries me as far as that two position, the double pivot, if we are actually going to play that or not, because there's no depth there. And midfield wins you games, as we saw in the Champions League final. Anytime PSG step on the pitch, they lost to Chelsea, obviously in the FIFA Club World Cup final, but that could have been a fluke. I think 9 times out of 10, PSG goes in and wins that match 2-3-0, 2-1, 3-1, something like that. Hats off to Chelsea though. Not trying to discount that performance or anything, but PSG with a midfield of Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, and John Neves. Like, Vitinha is having one of these seasons that's on a Modric, on a Rodri, on a Pirlo 06. He's having one of these seasons, and he's class above everybody else in the midfield. Then you add Fabiano Ruiz and João Neves. That's why PSG are dominating sides because of this midfield, and then having Hakimi push in. So we have to get the midfield right. So that really worries me. For me, I'd say we haven't gotten better. Lookman coming in obviously makes us a better team, but as a whole, with Kivu being a question mark, Sucic, everything's pointing to him being a stud. Still a question mark. We haven't seen a full season of him in top football. Luis Enrique, Boni, Pio, all these players are question marks. And with your coach being a question mark too, what formation we're going to be playing being a question mark, it's worrisome for me going into this next season. So let me guys know what you think in the comments, what your expectations, and if you feel better now, and if we sign Lookman, do you feel better as a fan going into this season than you did at any point last season? Let me know in the comments, and yeah, be a great discussion to have. So that's going to do it for this week. Hopefully we'll have some more news to kind of give something new to next week. Again, please like, subscribe, comment, and if you guys wouldn't mind, sharing, letting people, getting more people engaged in discussions and whatnot. So appreciate all the support. And as always, Forza Inter.